Welcome to this brief video prepared for the Georgia Public Health Association's Career Development section about the IRB review process. My name is Dr. Sarah Plaspole, and for the next few minutes I will be describing to you the IRB review process. We'll be talking about a few topics, including what exactly is an institutional review board or an IRB, what can one expect during an IRB review process, and tips for a successful IRB review and approval. So let's begin with just a very basic definition for what is an institutional review board or an IRB. An institutional review board is a committee whose primary responsibilities is to protect the rights and welfare of human research participants. If you are a college student at the moment, if you are working within a hospital or a clinic setting, if you're working in any type of setting where clinical trials and human subject research is being conducted, then the research has to go through institutional review in order to protect the rights and safety of the subjects who are in the study. The authority of the IRB is granted by federal regulations. We won't spend any time here talking about the specifics of those, but there are federal regulations that mandate exactly how an IRB will function, the rules that it will follow in carrying out its responsibility for human subject protections oversight. And as well as the university or institution that houses the IRB will have its own set of standard operating procedures that will include the federal guidelines. Membership on an IRB is very specific. These are defined by federal regulations as well as internal policies to complement or supplement the federal regs. Basically, an IRB will have a minimum of 5 members. There will be a mixture of different areas represented, including clinical, non-clinical. There will be institutional-based members who are affiliated with the university or with the hospital if it's a clinical setting. And then there will be non-affiliated members. These are community members, and they are very important. I think they are probably the most important member of an IRB because they represent the perspective of the consumer. And so each IRB is required to have a very specific makeup. It's not voluntary. It is carefully crafted to fulfill all of the requirements established by the federal regulations. Each institution is going to have its own standard operating procedures, and this will support the federal regulations. Sometimes the institutional policy may simply just be a mirror of the federal regulations themselves, but typically there will be some sort of internal policy, some sort of standard operating procedures manual that describes in great detail how that university or how that system will operate the IRB. Every IRB operates a little bit differently, but at the same time, they all function in the same way, and so the basics are going to be the same, regardless of whether it is a very small private college or a very large state university or a large hospital system. And so the same rules apply, and then the institution itself will establish its SOPs, its forms, its review process, etc., specific for that site. So what can you expect during an IRB review process? That really is the heart of this presentation. Many of you may have already gone through the IRB review process for a research project that you conducted either while in school or out of school. So let's look at exactly how that process is going to work. So as the principal investigator, or if there is a team of investigators working together, the principal investigator, who is the lead researcher, will submit an IRB protocol submission, and that protocol will include all of the details for the study. It should be very comprehensive in nature, and it will explain exactly what the study entails, how it will be conducted, and most importantly, how the rights of the subjects who will be enrolled, if there are human subjects, will be protected. So typically when the IRB receives a protocol submission, it will conduct a pre-review, and one of the most important early steps is determine the type of review that is appropriate for the study. Will it be a full review? Will it be expedited review? There are different criteria that a study must satisfy in order to be expedited. If it is a study, let's say it's like a clinical trial where there are drugs involved, and it's, and there is more than minimal risk for the subjects who will be enrolled, then it will certainly have a full review. But many studies, especially at the college and university level, many of them are expedited because they typically are minimal risk, and so it may be an expedited review. But regardless of what type of review, it's most important for the IRB to determine this up front so that it will be able to carry out the process efficiently. The IRB will typically assign IRB members to serve as reviewers for the content of the protocol submission, and the reviewers most likely will operate with a checklist in which they are looking at the required elements that is required for all studies. So what are these elements? What exactly will they be looking at? Typically, an IRB application is going to have quite a few sections that will specifically ask for details on these next two slides on the topics that you're about to see. So the IRB wants to know basically what are the aims of your study, provide a little bit of background, help the IRB members to understand what your study is about, why does it matter, why is it significant. If it is a study that involves drugs or devices or biologics, then that information will be required. They will want to know about the scientific design, exactly how will you be conducting this study, what are your methods, and what are the research procedures that will take place. The IRB is going to be concerned about the inclusion and exclusion criteria for subjects. How specific are these criteria? They may be very broad, or they may be very narrow and very restrictive. It needs to be spelled out. The IRB will be looking at the statistical analysis and data monitoring plan. Are these appropriate for the type of study that's being conducted? The IRB will be looking at subject privacy and confidentiality. This is very important in order to protect the rights of the subjects, and this is one of the most important components in my opinion. The IRB is going to be looking at the recruitment of subjects. How will you be recruiting subjects to be in the study? It certainly needs to be voluntary, that is a requirement, but how will they be recruited? Will it strictly be volunteer? Will it be word of mouth? Will there be flyers sent around or posted on campus? Will an email go out to everyone? Will subjects be offered some type of incentive, or not an incentive, but really more of a token of appreciation for enrolling in the study? There cannot be any coercion, and so the IRB is very careful to make sure that the recruitment is fair. The IRB will be looking at subject compensation and the cost. There should be no cost to the subject to be in the study, and so the IRB will make sure that if there is compensation for participation, that it is not excessive, and it is not so much that the subject would enroll in the study strictly to earn that compensation. Again, that would be a form of coercion, and that would not be acceptable. The IRB will be looking at potential risks and discomforts and the benefits for the subjects. What are the known risks? If it's simply taking a survey, then the risks are minimal. If it involves something like undergoing some type of a treatment procedure or some type of a therapeutic regimen, then there would be some potential risk for injury, so those need to be spelled out. The informed consent is one of the main foundations of the IRB review process. If there are children involved, children that are under the age of 18, then an assent would be be used as well. Typically, for most studies that are conducted in a university, you would see the informed consent involving adults only, but children certainly could be included if the study warrants that. If children aren't included, or any other vulnerable population, then there would be additional guidelines and requirements, because children are considered a vulnerable population, and so it gets a little more complicated, but at the same time those elements are in place to protect the rights of the children. So we will not go into the specific details for an informed consent. That could be another presentation and is very important. There are a standard set of elements that should be in the consent. Conflict of interest disclosure is also important. It is key that the researchers, that everyone who is involved in the study, disclose any conflicts that they may have. And sometimes there can be a conflict, and as long as it is disclosed and everything is very transparent, then the IRB will determine if that is an issue or not. But the key here is disclosure, and so it's very common for an investigator may have a conflict, but as long as he or she discloses that, then everyone involved is aware, the IRB is aware, the subjects when they are enrolled in the study are aware, so the disclosure is very important. So the IRB will review these elements within your study, and they will have deliberation, they will vote, and typically they will vote to approve the study. A study cannot be approved for longer than a period of 1 year. And so the IRB, if it is a study that involves greater than minimal risk, they may approve the study for less than 1 year, with the requirement that the investigator come back with progress information, a progress report at a certain point in time, maybe 6 months after the study is started, for example, so that the IRB can look at the progress and make sure that everything is operating smoothly and there have been no issues with the enrollment and with the conduct of the study. So when you complete the IRB review, when your study has been completed, you will receive a letter of approval, and the approval letter will have what the terms are, including that time period. That's very important. It's very important to maintain this letter, because down the road, when you get ready to publish your research, then the journal that you submit your manuscript to is most likely going to require you to validate that your study underwent IRB review and approval, and they will actually ask for evidence. So you need to be prepared to show them this document. So be sure you hang on to all IRB documentation for this reason. So some tips for a successful IRB review and approval. It's very important to have your documentation be organized. It could seem very complicated when you're not familiar, when the process is new to you. It seems like a lot of information, but as you understand how the information is being used, why it's being asked, I think that makes it much more easy to understand the need for the documentation to be organized. There should be clear communication between the principal investigator and the IRB. The research team must adhere to all IRB recommendations and guidance. The IRB is not making suggestions. When they make recommendations, those should be honored. And the IRB will follow up and commonly may conduct a random audit to make sure that you are conducting the study as submitted and as. The most important thing to remember, just sort of parting words here, everyone is working together to ensure a safe review for your study subjects and overall regulatory compliance for your research. Everyone is working together, and so it may seem like the IRB, sometimes investigators feel like the IRB is there to give them a hard time or to put up some roadblocks, and nothing could be further from the truth. The IRB wants you to be successful with your study. They want to make sure that subjects that are enrolled in the study are safe And so that is their job, and they are typically very easy to work with, but the bottom line is everyone is working together. So keep that in mind. I hope this presentation has been helpful for you. There is a lot of information that is available online. If you can look at federal regulations that provide the oversight or provide the guidance for IRB policies and procedures, but most probably even more importantly for you as a student or at a university, or working within a hospital setting, for example, you should check out your university or your institution's IRB policy and make sure you understand the time frame, the guidelines, the forms, all the details. They should be very clearly defined, and then you should follow their process, and that will lead to a successful IRB review.